recording another video from in my car, because when do I ever get time these days to record videos? So this is another one that I think, wanted to have conversationally, because it's something you learn from work, but it's a life lesson, I think, that I've learned the hard way many times, and it's something I want to share with people who are early in their careers, or not the same sort of length of service as me. I've been working now for 21, 22 years in the corporate world, and it's a life lesson I've learnt, and it's more general than the workplace, but it's effectively around situational friendships versus real friendships. And again, this stems from some comments that came from my video on your co-workers not being your friends, but really this applies to any situational friendships that you have, and how these aren't actually real friends, and learning later on in life as you get more sort of emotionally mature and intelligent that these people are not your real friends, and actually it's an illusion. And I think it's really trying to get to grips with that early on. If I'd known that earlier on, I think I would have saved myself a lot of stress and angst and all sorts of things that come with the mixing of work and your professional, personal life, etc. But so really just thinking of the context right now. So with all of the people that in your life, maybe you have real friends outside of the office, but a lot of the people that you socialize with are people that you see often. They're people that you're always around. And these people, say, for example, some real bad stuff happens in your life, where you lose everything, you lose your job, you lose your title, you lose your network, and you're no longer useful to these individuals. These people aren't going to be there for you or be around even when all of this stuff happens. And I think, I've experienced that. I'm sure many of you watching this have experienced that as well, that when things gets really tough, they're not always there, and actually majority of them aren't there, and they just disappear or they're invisible. And that's the issue with situational friendships. Early on in your career, you confuse this proximity with connection. So you're thinking just because you're you're close to these people in a proximity sort of basis, you're in an office 8 to 9 hours a day, or in a workplace, environment, 8 to 9 hours or 10 hours a day with the same people, you mistake that sort of proximity for deep connection. And that's really the big issue that, I want to share in this video, about what that means versus a real friendship. And once you kind of have this boundary of knowing about situational friends versus real ones, it really helps you to protect your energy, your peace of mind. You protect yourself, I think, and it just really frees your mind up. And it's something that, it's come out from this video that I did about your co-workers not being your friends, because a lot of these times that's an example of situational. It might not just be the office. It could be like classes that you do if you're a student, or if you're in a social group where you're always together doing a certain activity. These are proximity based relationships, and as I've mentioned, these are because you share a context. There's a context, as I mentioned, is, the workplace, or it could be an activity or whatever, but they're not real. So even though you may feel like, yeah, you hang out, you go for drinks after work, or you have lunch together, you laugh about the same things, you share these context jokes about the situation you're in, or, you've got these shared experiences around the situation. But deep down, if you go down some more levels, you don't know if you share the same core values as these people. You don't know if you share the same sort of emotional, moral compasses, etc. All of that stuff that creates deep, meaningful connection. You don't know if you have those connections with these individuals. And that's the real difference here, because that is what you get invested in a real friendship. You invest in that sort of emotional connection where you share core values. And a telling moment for this is this is evidence in itself, is that when your situation changes with these individuals, because it is a situational friendship, when your situation changes, say that, you change jobs, or you get promoted, or in the workplace, or something changes in the activity you're doing, you'll suddenly notice that these people disappear. They either disappear, or what happens is the way they interact with you changes. It just flips just like that. And that's because your friendship was never real. It was never based on anything core to you, to your being, core to the way you see life. And that's a very different experience. So it's a bit of an illusion on the surface, where when things change, you get a bit shocked. You're like, oh, actually, I thought we were friends, but then all of a sudden, this relationship's just changed in an instant, because maybe I got promoted and they didn't, or maybe someone else left the friendship group who was more useful than I was, and therefore I'm not as useful to the individual. So it's really interesting where the dynamics are what drive the proximities, what drives the relationship, versus the core values of you're together because you believe in the same things, or you live life in a certain way together. And I guess that's why we live in a world now where many people don't have true friends or real friends, because I think friendship requires a consistency in being vulnerable, understanding people on a deeper level, and having the time to do that over a long period of time. Because with real friendships, it's not about how often you see the person, or it's more that connection is deeper. So even if you meet once or twice a year, that connection is always there. It doesn't change. It's not situational. And those people don't have to work in the same arena of you, or actually care that you're someone very accomplished or high performing, or you've achieved a lot. That doesn't matter to them. What matters to them is how you are intrinsically, how you are feeling as a person, what challenges you're going through in your life. And we live in a world now where we're so exposed, social media, even on LinkedIn with your career, that it's all just network. Are you useful to me? What is it that you do on paper? How does that link with me on a situational basis? And we end up with all of these fractured sort of situational friendships that come and go so easily. And it's sad in a way that is the way life is, and it's very different to how it was before. But the sooner you learn that this situational way of being is very different to like a real relationship, a real friendship, it will make your career a lot easier, and it will just generally protect you in your life a lot better. Another reason why I wanted to talk about this in this video is because I've experienced this, and it's just from a high performing perspective. So say, for example, I have started to climb the ladder, accelerated my performance quickly, and you'll notice that you'll suddenly be surrounded by people who would just know that that's happening, and they want to be part of it, or they want to be close to that rise, because that rise attracts certain types of individuals. Or maybe now I'm networked with people who are a lot more powerful in the company I work with, etc. So people want to be close to that. And when you're in this state of high performance, or you're really on the rise, and people can see that, it's not everyone who's around you is clapping for you, and is there for the win and for your win, because they're there just for the proximity. They're not there to partner with you and to actually really understand who you are and partner with you as a real friend. They're just there because the proximity of your, I would say, what you're offering, or the energy, or who you're connected to, is what is really driving them to be around you, not for who you are. And it's important you don't get stuck in this cycle of thinking they're the real friends, because then you're opening yourself up to the wrong people. Because over time, as you grow and you accelerate your career and you start achieving all the goals you want to achieve, you're opening yourself up to the wrong people there, and you're almost sharing secrets or being vulnerable with the people who actually will turn on you the minute that you're not useful to them anymore, or that they don't need that proximity to you anymore. So I would say take a step back right now and audit your friendship circles. I know it sounds like a really sort of odd thing to do, but just audit the people around you, and see who are these situational people versus who are the people that are your real friends, who are more deeply connected to you on a sort of core values level, I would say, as you as an individual. And if you don't have many of those people around you, and you actually find that you're surrounded by proximity-based individuals, then start to carve out time to build depth, because depth is important. Even just having one real friend or one real, person who you're deeply connected to in your life, it can make a massive difference to your well-being, and to your well-being, but also helping you push yourself to get to where you need to get to in life. And I think that's really important, that you spend time building depth as well, and not just focus on proximity, because it's easier. And then this also means, building relationships outside of your industry. It doesn't have to just be where you work, what you do, the same interests. You can build relationships outside of the industry, and you can do that by, going to events as well and meeting individuals, or maybe finding an individual who has a very similar sort of, I would say, way of life to you, in terms of what your belief system is, and etc., and all of that sort of thing. If you kind of find people in those circles to start building deeper connections with, it doesn't always have to be just because you spend 10 hours a day with this group of people. It has to be one of those people. So it's finding opportunities to do that. And in doing all of this, and where you get politeness, don't mistake that sort of politeness in proximity to loyalty, because loyalty is very different. It's a very different thing. Loyalty is, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, is, when things don't go well for you, and, you may lose a lot of things, it's the ones who are loyal to you that will be there, that will stick around, that will help you. These are the people that believe in you on a deeper level. And that is very different to just being next to people who are polite all the time, but they're just always around you. So politeness and loyalty are very different things as well. I hope this video has been useful to you to really start to understand, difference between situational friends versus real ones. And in the workplace, if you're experiencing this, or outside of the workplace, I would like to hear your thoughts, and hear what you're going through, and hopefully we can help each other to build a better, more deeper, meaningful connections, outside of work or in your life generally. If you like this content, please subscribe to this channel, and let me know what else you'd like me to discover and for you, and build on in our videos going forward. But happy to build this community out. So thank you very much, and see you soon.